Great. That's a great question. Thank you for having me. And I too come from uh, the Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, and the unceded territory of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, um, Salish, Musqueam bands. And thank you all for coming here tonight. I think to understand where these ideologies gain their power, because they always seem to be talking about the loss of something. And I think the only way that you can understand the loss when you understand the sense of entitlement and privilege upon which it's based. And you know, the United States in the 2000 census, and it was similar here and similar in the United Kingdom, for the first time, they put a date by which whites would no longer be a majority in those respective countries. And white supremacist movements seized upon that census data to say, look, we are facing an existential crisis to the existence of white people. The 14 words is the most famous slogan behind white supremacy, and it's we must secure the existence of our people and a future for the white race. And you know, if you look at things like the Great Replacement theory, and these theories go back decades, it's the perception that the other is coming to replace our position of power and privilege, the position, it's not my position. And I think you have to understand that sense of privilege and entitlement is the fuel upon which these organizations exploit using fear. And with the internet has now made it easier for individuals to find like-minded individuals and to spread their ideologies of fear and mistrust and misinformation in the society. What makes social media so dangerous is what makes social media so great, and that it allows us to connect and build community and relationships for better or for worse. What white supremacist groups have done, particularly, you know, if you go back looking to Anders Breivik in Norway about a decade ago, killed 76 people. That was the first time that a manifesto had been published. And with each increasing attack, and I just want to say here, I think the comment made earlier about Canada and its angel complex, I think is absolutely right. In Canada, there are just as many hate groups per capita as the United States. While we have had attacks on gurdwaras, we've had attacks on churches, we've had attacks on synagogues, we've had attacks on mosques throughout the world in this sort of transnational wave of white supremacist terrorism. One of those attacks was here in Canada in the mosque shooting. And you know, when we talk about white supremacy, there's different facets to it, and I want to just sort of distinguish what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the very virulent, violent white supremacy. Other forms of white supremacy is some of it's misinformation that can be corrected with education and awareness. Some of it, you know, people have the wrong ideas or they've learned the wrong thing. Those things can be corrected. But this violent white supremacy is something which needs to be taken much more seriously, and the response to it is not educate. Well, some of it's education, but really it's a law enforcement response. It's an intelligence response from the country's intelligence agencies. It's a legislative response, and at the same time, it's a whole of society response. I think this challenge of racism in all its different forms is a whole of society response, and I don't think we should wait for somebody else to do it. It's who are we going to be in every moment of every day? Are we going to be silent, or are we going to be heard? Are we going to intervene, or are we not going to intervene? But with each attack, going back to the transnational terrorism, they build upon each other, and each one adds a new component. And the whole purpose of these attacks and manifestos and components is to create notoriety, to create fame, to be remembered forever. And I had the luxury of spending a day in Paris at the Christchurch Call, and I got to meet Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who very wisely chose not to name the attacker of the Christchurch massacre, and denying him that prize and that reward that he sought for that attack that he did. And that Christchurch attack was, it was the first time something was live streamed. And I think even today, if you look hard enough, you can find that video. And social media companies have squashed millions and millions of versions of that video. But the challenge with the internet and these ideologies and this terrorism is it kind of lives forever. There's this electronic space that has no borders, no boundaries, where these manifestos live, the ideology lives. The people can come and go. They can, but it's the energy of it lives on forever, and it's a very difficult, complex task to try and address. I spent a decade when I was co-founded Life After Hate in working with social media companies and government trying to tackle these issues, and it's a very intricate process, but it's something that we absolutely have to address. I want to add to that, having spent time down at Facebook and working with them with Life After Hate, we had when people were posting offensive, really extremist content, we did a redirect method where they were sort of referred the opportunity to click to Life After Hate to connect, to get resources to off ramp them. But when you start looking at keywords, there's all kinds of unintended consequences, and you think, well, we'll put Adolf Hitler in, right? And that's an easy one to get rid of. But then it blocks content elsewhere that is part of legitimate historical discourse. So I've watched them struggle with it's easy to say something is hateful, but the how else could it be interpreted in the context, which makes it confusing. I had the dubious distinction of being prosecuted under Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act in the early 1990s, so I'm very familiar with that. I think what needs to be done to get Canadians on side is it needs to be really well defined, and being really clear on what is hateful versus say what is offensive, because offensive can be very subjective. And I think Canadians' concerns are sort of mission creep. Okay, we're not going to allow people to say this, and then it's sort of inches further. I think if you clearly define it and put guardrails around that and explain it to people, I think that helps, because I think there's a lot of talk about eliminating and getting rid of everything and content moderation of online hate, but in my opinion, it's light on rigorous definitions that could make Canadians feel at ease with some sort of regulation.